I thought the hardest day of my life was watching them lower my husband into the ground. I was wrong. The rain that afternoon felt like it was crying with me. I stood there in my black dress soaked to the bone, clutching the single white rose David had given me the night before he passed. He was only 43. A sudden heart attack, they said. One moment we were laughing over coffee in the kitchen of the home we built together, and the next, he was gone. We had been married for 11 years. Not the fairy tale kind everyone posts about, but the real kind. The kind where you fight over whose turn it is to do the dishes and then end up dancing in the living room anyway. We started with nothing. I left my family's small apartment with 2 suitcases and a dream. David left his father's shadow. Together we opened a little bakery that grew into 3 beautiful cafes across the city. Late nights, flour on our faces, stolen kisses between customers. That was our life. We never had children, but we had each other, and that always felt like enough. After the funeral, everyone left. The flowers wilted on the grass. I was still standing there when David's father walked up to me. Edward had never liked me. He thought I was just a girl from the wrong side of town who trapped his only son. But that day he didn't even pretend to be kind. "Sarah," he said, his voice flat, "we need to talk about the estate." I thought he meant the funeral bills. I was so wrong. He pulled out a folded document from his coat pocket, the pages already marked with little yellow tabs. According to David's will, the one he made years ago, everything goes to me. The houses, the cafes, the accounts, all of it. You can keep your clothes and personal things, of course, but you have 7 days to vacate the main house. My knees almost gave out right there beside my husband's fresh grave. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for the cruel joke to end. But there was no joke, just the cold March wind and the sound of my heart cracking wide open. I whispered, "Edward, this is our home. We built it together." He looked at me like I was a stranger. "Blood is blood, Sarah. You were never really family." That was the moment the real betrayal began. The next 7 days felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Edward and his brother moved in like they owned the place, which, according to that old will, they now believed they did. They changed the locks while I was at the lawyer's office. They packed my things into boxes and left them on the porch like I was some tenant being evicted. I sat on the front steps that last night, staring at the garden David and I had planted together, the roses that still bloomed even though their gardener was gone. I cried until there were no tears left. How could the man I loved more than life leave me with nothing? How could the family I had cooked for, cared for, celebrated with, turn on me the second he was in the ground? I kept replaying every moment. The way Edward used to smile tightly when David praised my ideas for the cafes. The way he once told David, right in front of me, "You could have done better, son." I had forgiven it all because I had David's hand in mine. Now that hand was cold and 6 feet under, and I was alone. I moved into my best friend's spare room with 2 suitcases and a broken spirit. Every night I stared at the ceiling asking the same question. Did David really leave me unprotected? Did our whole life together mean nothing to him in the end? The pain was so deep it felt like it was carving my soul in half. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I just existed in this gray fog of grief and betrayal. But one sleepless night, something shifted. I remembered the last real conversation we ever had. David had been tired, holding my face in his hands, looking at me like he was memorizing me. "Baby," he whispered, "if anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll go to the safety deposit box at Central Bank. Box 247. The key is in my old blue jacket. I took care of you. I always will." At the time, I thought he was just being dramatic. He was only 43. The next morning, I went to the bank with shaking hands. The manager led me downstairs. I opened the box, and there it was. A brand new will, dated only 6 weeks before his death, notarized, signed, and a thick envelope with my name on it in David's handwriting. I sat on the cold floor of the bank vault and cried all over again, but this time they were different tears. Inside the letter he wrote, Sarah, my love, I know my father. He's been trying to take the business for years. I made this new will to protect you. Everything, the houses, the cafes, the savings, is yours. He doesn't know about it. If he tries anything, show them this. You were never just my wife. You were my partner in every way that mattered. Live the life we dreamed of. I'll be watching. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something besides pain. I felt fire. I didn't run to Edward screaming. I didn't cry in front of him. I simply folded the letter, put the will in my bag, and walked out of that bank with my head high for the first time in weeks. The broken woman they threw out of her own home was gone. In her place was someone they were about to meet for the very first time. I waited 2 more weeks. I let Edward and his brothers settle into my house. I let them post pictures on social media bragging about keeping the family legacy alive. I let them believe they had won. Then I sent one simple message. Family meeting at the main house tomorrow at 3 p.m. We need to settle everything once and for all. They arrived smiling, smug, already talking about selling the 3rd cafe. Edward even had the nerve to pat my shoulder like I was a poor little widow who finally saw reason. I stood in the living room, the same room where David and I used to slow dance, and I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Before we sign anything, I want to read you something." I took out the letter. My hands didn't shake anymore. I read David's words out loud, every line about how he knew his father's greed, how he changed the will in secret, how he chose me. When I finished, I placed the new will on the coffee table next to the old one they loved so much. The silence was deafening. Edward's face went white. His brother dropped the pen he was holding. They stared at the documents like they had seen a ghost, because in a way they had. David had reached from beyond the grave and protected me one last time. You can't do this," Edward stammered. My lawyer stepped forward from the hallway. "Actually, he can, and he did. The new will is legal, notarized, and witnessed. Everything belongs to Sarah. You have 30 days to return what you've taken." I watched Edward's world crumble the same way mine had on the day of the funeral. He tried to argue, tried to threaten, but the law and David's love were on my side. In the end, they left with nothing but their pride in pieces. Today I walked through the same house they tried to steal from me. The roses are still blooming. The cafes are thriving under my name. Some nights I still talk to David like he's right here beside me. I tell him thank you. I tell him I'm okay. Betrayal breaks you into 1,000 pieces. But sometimes those pieces come back together stronger, sharper, and more beautiful than before. Edward taught me that blood isn't always thicker than love. David taught me that real love doesn't end. It just changes form. And I taught myself that no one gets to write the final chapter of my story except me. If you're watching this and someone has taken everything from you, hold on. Your comeback is coming. The universe has a way of returning what was stolen. Sometimes through a piece of paper, sometimes through a quiet strength you didn't know you had. I'm living proof. Rest in peace, my love, and thank you for everything.